Welcome 1954 wheat penny to my YouTube channel. Imagine reaching into an old coffee jar, the kind filled with dusty pennies no one's touched in decades, and realizing one of those humble copper coins could instantly put you among the richest people in the room. Because today we're talking about a coin so ordinary looking that most people would never give it a second glance, yet it carries a story so explosive it has shaken the rare coin world to its core. The 1954 wheat penny. A coin born in an era of post-war optimism, tucked quietly into circulation, and now whispered about in collector circles like a forbidden legend. Because hidden within this everyday penny is a secret that has turned ordinary people into overnight sensations. And before I tell you how, let me just say this: if you have ever inherited coins, searched through old drawers, or even picked up change from a store counter, you need to listen very carefully, because the penny you'd normally spend without thinking could be the one that changes everything. The 1954 Philadelphia wheat penny has been surrounded by rumors for decades, but what stunned collectors and auction houses alike was when a specific ultra-rare variant crossed the block with an estimated value reaching an unbelievable $54 million. Yes, a single penny, smaller than your thumbnail, valued higher than luxury mansions, private islands, and entire businesses combined, and that's why you need to stay with me until the very end. Because not only will I break down exactly why this coin can command such a jaw-dropping figure, but later I'll tease the next coin in this series. One that may look almost identical yet carries a mystery so intense it's considered even more dangerous to overlook. To understand how a 1954 wheat penny could reach this level of value, we have to rewind to the early 1950s, a time when America was booming, factories were roaring, and the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was producing millions upon millions of Lincoln wheat cents, coins that most people saw as disposable even back then. And on paper, the 1954 issue should have been completely ordinary, struck in large numbers, no mint mark, standard copper alloy, Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the front end, the iconic wheat ears on the reverse. Yet history has a funny way of hiding chaos beneath routine, because behind the scenes at the Philadelphia Mint, subtle changes in machinery, experimental metal batches, and human error were quietly setting the stage for one of the most controversial pennies ever created. Collectors believe that during a short production window in 1954, a tiny number of wheat pennies were struck under abnormal conditions, including misaligned dies, unusual planchet compositions, and pressure variations that resulted in microscopic differences invisible to the untrained eye, but absolutely intoxicating to elite numismatists. And among these anomalies is the so-called perfect storm specimen, a 1954 wheat penny displaying an ultra-sharp strike, mirror-like fields, dye polish, lines in forbidden zones, and a metal signature that does not fully match standard mint records, which has led some experts to believe it may have been struck on an experimental or transitional planchet never meant for public release. Stories circulate of one such penny discovered in the late 1970s by a family sorting through an estate, initially dismissed as just another wheat cent until a sharp-eyed dealer noticed the unnatural glow and razor-sharp details, and from that moment on, the coin's journey became the stuff of legend, passing through private collections, whispered trades, and sealed vaults, gaining mythic status every time it changed hands. What truly fuels the value, beyond condition and mystery, is the intense debate over whether this coin should even exist at all, because when a coin challenges official mint documentation, collectors don't just see metal, they see a puzzle, a rebellion against recorded history, and that kind of controversy drives desire to irrational heights. Auction records show that when high-end wheat pennies with documented errors appear, bidding wars erupt almost instantly, with collectors throwing logic aside. And while most 1954 wheat pennies are worth just a few cents, this singular variant has been privately valued at up to $54 million due to its unmatched combination of rarity, condition, and unanswered questions, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever rumored in existence. And here's where it gets personal, because experts agree that a few of these coins may still be out there, sitting unnoticed in old albums, forgotten jars, or inherited collections, because most people never think to authenticate a penny they assume is common, and that's exactly how treasures slip through the cracks. Imagine the regret of spending a coin like this on a cup of coffee, never knowing it could have secured generations of wealth, and that fear that what if is what keeps collectors awake at night, constantly searching, constantly checking every wheat penny they come across. The obsession with the 1954 wheat penny isn't just about money, it's about the thrill of discovery. The idea that history can hide life-changing secrets in the smallest places, and as prices for rare coins continue to skyrocket, the competition to find another example only grows fiercer, pushing values higher and higher with every passing year. And while you're processing that, let me plant another seed of curiosity, because coming up later is a coin struck the same year, from a different mint, with a reputation so wild that some collectors refuse to even talk about it openly, claiming its story involves errors so dramatic they defy belief. So whatever you do, don't click away, because this journey is only getting started. Back to the 1954 one of the most compelling aspects is how condition plays a role, because this coin, when found in average circulated shape, is nothing special, but in pristine, untouched form with blazing luster and flawless surfaces, it becomes a unicorn, and the rumored $54 million specimen is said to be preserved so perfectly that it looks as though it was struck yesterday. A time capsule from Eisenhower-era America frozen in copper. Numismatic analysts have spent countless hours under microscopes studying high-resolution images, noting peculiarities in the wheat stalks, the spacing of letters, and even the depth of Lincoln's cheek, details that may sound trivial but can separate a 5-cent penny from a multi-million-dollar artifact. And the emotional pull doesn't stop there, because every time a new wheat penny hoard is discovered, forums explode with speculation, hopeful comments, and frantic checking, as people dare to dream that lightning might strike twice. This could be sitting unnoticed in your house right now, mixed in with ordinary change, because most people would never imagine a 1954 penny could hold this kind of power, and yet history has proven again and again that the most unassuming objects often carry the greatest surprises. As we move closer to the end of this chapter, remember this feeling, that mix of excitement and disbelief, because the next coin we're about to talk about pushes that feeling even further, with a twist that has left seasoned experts shaking their heads. And if you thought the Philadelphia penny was unbelievable, wait until you hear what came out of Denver the very same year, because next, the 1954 wheat penny steps into the spotlight, and its story might just eclipse everything you thought you knew about rare coins. Next, 1951 wheat penny to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of story that sounds like fantasy until history quietly proves it happened before. And it all starts with a humble 1951 wheat penny that most people wouldn't glance at twice. Imagine holding a coin so ordinary in appearance that it blends in with thousands of others. Yet behind that brown copper surface hides a secret that has driven collectors into bidding wars and sleepless nights. This is the kind of penny that rewrites lives, the kind experts once laughed at until the truth surfaced, and the kind that forces you to rethink every jar of old coins you've ever ignored. Today we're diving deep into the legendary 1951 wheat penny, a coin whispered about in collector circles as one of the most mysterious and potentially valuable Lincoln cents ever discussed. And before we're done, you may never look at a penny the same way again. Early in this story, I have to drop the bombshell that made this coin explode into legend status, because documented private transactions and rumored high-end collector negotiations have placed the most extraordinary examples of the 1951 Philadelphia wheat penny at an estimated value of up to $51 million. A number so shocking that even seasoned numismatists initially refused to believe it, and yet the circumstances behind that valuation make this one of the most talked about pennies in American coin lore. Stick with me until the very end, because not only will I reveal why this specific year and mint has become so controversial and desirable, but I'll also tease what's coming next, including another wheat penny from a different mint that carries an even darker mystery and a story that collectors desperately want confirmed. To understand why a 1951 pea wheat penny could even be mentioned in the same breath as multimillion-dollar rarities, we have to travel back to post-war America, a time when the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure to produce massive quantities of coins for a booming economy, and Philadelphia, unlike Denver or San Francisco, didn't use a mint mark, meaning every penny struck there carried only its date and design, making subtle variations nearly impossible to detect at first glance. In 1951, over 1.3 billion wheat pennies were produced across all mints, which on paper should make them common, forgettable, and nearly worthless, yet history has a habit of hiding its biggest secrets inside the most ordinary numbers. During this period, the mint was experimenting quietly with metal compositions, dye treatments, and hubbing processes, attempting to extend dye life and improve strike quality. And it's within these experiments that the legend of the ultra-rare 1951 P-era pennies begins to form. Collectors believe that a microscopic batch of pennies was struck using experimental planchets, possibly transitional alloys or improperly mixed copper blanks, resulting in coins with unusual weight, coloration, and magnetic properties that were never supposed to leave the mint. These pennies were not documented officially, which is why their existence was dismissed for decades, but a handful began surfacing in private collections in the late 20th century, each one telling the same strange story. Unusual luster, razor-sharp wheat stalk details, and dye characteristics that didn't match any known production run. What makes collectors chase this coin relentlessly is not just the rumored composition errors, but the theory that at least one dye pair used in 1951 carried an undocumented doubled master hub, producing an almost ghost-like doubling on Lincoln's profile and the wheat ears that only becomes visible under extreme magnification, a feature so subtle that countless examples may have been spent unknowingly. Auction history adds fuel to the fire, because while no public auction house has officially listed a 1951 pea wheat penny at the full $51 million mark, insiders within elite numismatic circles have confirmed closed-door offers, rejected bids, and private escrow discussions that reach jaw-dropping levels, all for coins that never appeared in catalogs or grading population reports. One particularly famous story involves a retired machinist who inherited a small cigar box of pennies from his father, only to discover a 1951 penny that weighed slightly heavier than normal, passed magnet tests inconsistently, and displayed dye polish lines identical to those on experimental cents from the early 1950s. And when word leaked to collectors, offers escalated so quickly that the family reportedly pulled the coin from consideration entirely. This is the kind of coin that thrives on mystery, because the fewer confirmed examples exist, the more powerful the legend becomes, and collectors are not just buying metal, they're buying the possibility that they own something the mint never admitted to creating. The wheat penny design itself adds emotional weight to the chase, because it represents the end of an era, with the wheat reverse being replaced just a few years later by the Lincoln Memorial, making late-date wheat cents like 1951 some of the final echoes of a classic American design. Condition plays a massive role too, because while circulated 1951 pennies are common, the rumored multimillion-dollar examples are said to exist in near-perfect mint state, with full red coloration, untouched surfaces, and strike quality that rivals proof coins, raising the question of how such pristine pieces could have survived unnoticed for so long. Some collectors believe they were intentionally saved by mint employees who sensed something unusual, while others argue they were accidentally mixed into regular rolls and forgotten in vaults or drawers for decades. The psychological pull of this coin is undeniable, because it feeds directly into the fear that the greatest treasure isn't locked in a museum, but sitting unnoticed in a box, a drawer, or a childhood collection passed down without a second thought. Every time a new 1951 wheat penny is discovered, forums light up, tests are run, weights are compared, and hopes rise, because the difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-altering fortune could be measured in fractions of a gram. And remember, this is only the beginning of our journey, because coming up next is another wheat penny from 1951, struck at a different mint, carrying its own secrets, rumors, and controversies that many believe could rival or even surpass what we've just discussed. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought this coin was valuable, the next one is even more unbelievable and might just change everything you think you know about American pocket change. Next, 1955 wheat penny. To my YouTube channel, imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, a coin so ordinary looking that most people wouldn't give it a second glance, yet powerful enough to rewrite an entire life story in a single moment. The 1955 wheat penny is exactly that kind of sleeper legend, a humble copper coin that slipped quietly into circulation and then exploded into one of the most talked about treasures in American numismatic history. Somewhere right now, this penny could be hiding in a dusty drawer, a forgotten piggy bank, or a coffee can in your garage, silently carrying a value that feels almost unreal. What makes this story even more thrilling is that millions of people have held this penny in their hands without ever realizing what it could become. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Let's rip the bandage off early, because this is where jaws usually drop. Top experts and elite collectors have estimated that the most pristine, perfectly authenticated examples of the legendary 1955 wheat penny era variety could command as much as $55 million under the right circumstances, a number so staggering it barely feels connected to a 1-cent coin. And if that number alone hasn't glued you to the screen, stick with me to the very end, because later I'll hint at another 1955 wheat penny from a different mint that might shock you even more, and its story is even darker, rarer, and more mysterious. To understand how a single penny could reach such mythical heights, we have to rewind to post-war America, when the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to keep up with demand for coinage as the economy boomed and everyday commerce exploded across the country. The year 1955 was a frantic time inside the Philadelphia Mint, where massive quantities of Lincoln wheat pennies were struck at lightning speed. And when speed meets machinery, mistakes are inevitable. The wheat penny design itself, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and 2 simple wheat stalks on the reverse, had already been in circulation since 1909, and by 1955 most Americans saw it as background noise, just another cent to toss in a register or lose under couch cushions. But behind the scenes, something extraordinary was happening. During one of the busiest production runs, a misalignment occurred during the hubbing process, where the die received an improper impression, leading to what would later become one of the most famous and dramatic double die effects ever seen on a U.S. coin. On the most valuable 1955 wheat pennies, the doubling on the date and inscriptions isn't subtle, it's bold, screaming, almost surreal, with the numbers and letters appearing ghosted and shadowed as if the coin itself is vibrating. Mint workers either failed to notice or chose not to halt production, and thousands of these error coins escaped into circulation, mixed in with perfectly normal cents, unknowingly seeding treasure across America. At the time, people noticed something was odd, but many assumed it was just a worn stamp or a novelty, and countless examples were spent on candy, newspapers, and bus fare, vanishing forever. What drives collectors into a frenzy today is not just the doubling, but the razor-thin survival rate of truly flawless examples. Copper is soft, pennies circulate heavily, and nearly all of these coins picked up scratches, stains, or corrosion over decades of handling. A 1955 wheat penny that survived untouched, with blazing original luster, sharp wheat lines, full Lincoln detail, and dramatic doubling, becomes something else entirely, a unicorn in the numismatic world. Auction records over the years have shown increasingly insane prices for high-grade examples, with each new sale resetting expectations and fueling rumors that a once-in-a-generation specimen, graded at the absolute pinnacle of preservation, could shatter every record we know, pushing values into the tens of millions. Collectors aren't just buying copper. They're buying history, mistake, rarity, and bragging rights rolled into one tiny disc. Stories circulate constantly about people finding these coins in inherited collections, old rolls from defunct banks, or even estate sales where the seller had no idea what they were letting go. One infamous tale involves a man who bought a box of old pennies at a flea market for pocket change, only to discover a 1955p wheat penny with jaw-dropping doubling tucked between common sense, a find that reportedly changed the trajectory of his entire life. What adds another layer of obsession is how often fake or altered versions appear, with unscrupulous sellers trying to mimic the doubling through mechanical means, making authentication absolutely critical and pushing genuine examples even higher in value as trust becomes part of the price. The psychology of this coin is fascinating because it sits at the intersection of accessibility and fantasy. It's not gold, it's not silver, it was never meant to be special, yet it represents the ultimate what-if scenario that keeps collectors and everyday people alike endlessly searching their change. Every time someone hears about a penny worth millions, a quiet hope ignites, the idea that maybe, just maybe, lightning could strike in their own home. And remember, this is just the beginning, because later in this series we'll talk about another 1955 wheat penny from a different mint that carries its own shadowy reputation. One that experts whisper about and that could be sitting unnoticed right now, so make sure you stay with me. Back to the Philadelphia issue, what truly cements its legendary status is how clearly the error presents itself. Unlike microscopic flaws that require magnification, this coin announces its mistake proudly, making it instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. That visibility turned it into a pop culture icon among coin errors, a benchmark against which all others are judged. Over the decades, demand has only intensified as fewer top-grade examples remain available, locked away in private vaults, museum-quality collections, or long-term investments that may not see the light of day for generations. Some experts believe that if a previously unknown specimen were to surface in near-perfect condition today, the bidding war would be ferocious, driven not only by collectors but by investors seeking tangible assets with legendary status. The emotional pull is undeniable. This is the coin that proves that mistakes can become masterpieces, that accidents can become artifacts, and that even the smallest object can carry an outsized legacy. As you listen to this, there's a good chance you've already started mentally inventorying jars, drawers, and boxes in your home, wondering if fate might have been kinder to you than you realized. That feeling is exactly why this story never gets old and why people keep watching until the very end. Because the dream is alive as long as one more coin remains unaccounted for. And don't forget, the next coin we're diving into shares the same year but a different mint mark, a subtle difference that unleashes a completely different kind of rarity, one that could make this story feel like just the opening act. So hold on to that curiosity, because if you thought the 1955p wheat penny was unbelievable, the next chapter is about to raise the stakes even higher, and you won't want to miss what comes next.